Hi Lewis, hi. If I'd told you on Friday that you were going to end up fourth in the Grand Prix on Sunday, you probably wouldn't have believed me, would you? So does this feel like a really good recovery and comeback weekend for you and the team?
Yeah, good result, amazing result for the team. Third and fourth, good points. Great to finish ahead of the Mercedes team to get those points and even ahead of a McLaren. So yeah, definitely a positive. And I went forwards even after a bad start. So lots and lots of positives to take from it. I think there's, naturally I want to be further up. So just got to keep working at it. But we're definitely on the right path.
The strategy for Charles to start on the soft looked like the best strategy today. It really worked out pretty well. Is that an area where maybe they can improve on your side, or would you have been able to do something with that strategy today as well? Is that an area you want to look at?
It's a difficult one. I think it was clearly the quickest strategy in the end. For me, going on to them, I lost obviously so much time. I was kind of right with them. Obviously before Charles' stop, I was right with him, and then to come out 10 seconds behind, that definitely was a far too big a deficit for me to try and catch, and I couldn't close the gap at all. So a bit unfortunate with that in that respect. But considering we've not been upgrading the car for us to be kind of in the fight, it shows that the team's done a really, really great job this weekend. So I hope everyone back at the factory is happy, and yeah, we're definitely on the right path. I'm so close, still not got that podium, but I'll keep trying.
Thank you.
Verstappen's RB21 sliced through the final sector like it was qualifying again. Yet all eyes were on the red car chasing shadows 10 seconds behind. That delta, 10 seconds, told the story of Ferrari's weekend. Not their failure, but their limit. Charles Leclerc had started on softs, Lewis Hamilton on mediums. For 5 laps they traded tenths, until one pit stop rewrote everything. Hamilton emerged 10 seconds adrift, a number that Ferrari's engineers couldn't explain, and that Red Bull didn't need to, because in those 10 seconds lay the difference between a team rediscovering form and a team that never lost it. Red Bull's sprint data, Ferrari's blind spots, and McLaren's qualifying obsession all collided under the Texan sun. And by the time the flag fell, what looked like a recovery for Ferrari had become a warning. Red Bull's system still rules Formula One. On paper, the gap between Leclerc and Hamilton should have vanished once both Ferraris cleared the McLarens. In reality, it grew, exactly 10 seconds after the first pit cycle. The reason wasn't tyre degradation or a slow stop, it was information. Red Bull had sprint data, Ferrari didn't. When teams lose sprint telemetry, they lose the invisible map that defines Sunday's strategy. Tyre warm-up curves, track evolution rates, and surface temperature deltas all vanish. So when Fred Vasseur chose to split the strategies, sending Leclerc out on softs while Hamilton stayed on mediums, it wasn't an act of risk. It was a controlled gamble built on incomplete data. The soft tyre window looked fragile in simulations, but Verstappen's long-run consistency in FP2 suggested otherwise. He maintained less than 0.2 of degradation per lap, while Ferrari's models predicted nearly double that. In Austin's high-load corners, that 0.5 margin per sector translated to almost a second by lap 10. Hamilton's frustration in the media pen later wasn't about the tyre itself. It was about the absence of real-time correction. Ferrari's strategy loop, handicapped by missing sprint data, could only react after the damage was done. By the time Hamilton rejoined, 10 seconds adrift, Verstappen's ERS deployment map had already reset the race tempo. In Formula One, 10 seconds can represent either a failed strategy or a learning curve. Inside Maranello, engineers framed it as both. The soft-medium offset worked for Leclerc, confirming Ferrari's aero efficiency gains under race fuel. Hamilton's medium-first run exposed their inability to pivot mid-race without full telemetry. But Red Bull's mastery came from something subtler: coordination. Every sector of Verstappen's lap was calibrated to a database that stretched back to 2022. Ferrari were fighting physics. Red Bull were fighting probability. And yet, buried inside that 10-second loss was the first real sign that Ferrari's aerodynamic platform is finally stable enough to challenge again. Because the question now isn't whether Ferrari can close 10 seconds, it's whether Red Bull will ever give them another chance to. Lewis Hamilton's 4th place finish at Austin wasn't defined by where he crossed the line. It was defined by how he got there. From the first corner, the race was already slipping away. A perfect launch, neutralised by traffic and a split-second hesitation that allowed both Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc to seize track position. In modern Formula One, that's fatal. Hamilton knows it better than anyone. When tyre degradation is minimal and DRS trains form early, races are decided before the first braking zone. His post-race calm masked the same frustration that's followed him all season, a sense that Ferrari's car is finally fast enough, but not yet flexible enough. "I went forwards, even after a bad start," he said, but what he meant was, I shouldn't have had to fight back at all. The irony is that Ferrari built the SF25 to suit him. Front-loaded aerobalance, stable under braking, torque delivery softened through the lower gears. It's a car designed around Hamilton's inputs, but its strength under single-lap precision often leaves him trapped behind slower cars in race traffic. The aerodynamic wake at Austin cost him nearly 6/10 per lap whenever he sat within DRS of another car. That's a mechanical reality, not a mental one. Still, Hamilton's biggest opponent right now isn't Max Verstappen. It's time. Every race that passes without a podium erodes the psychological momentum of his move to Ferrari. Inside Maranello, the engineers call it the confidence curve. It measures how comfortable a driver feels, improvising around setup imperfections. Leclerc's curve fluctuates wildly. Hamilton's is almost flat. That's why he trusts process over instinct, a trait that once made him unstoppable at Mercedes, but now demands a car that can mirror his precision. And yet what separates Hamilton from the rest of the grid is that even through frustration, he sees progress. The calm tone, the careful optimism, the insistence that we're on the right path. These aren't platitudes. They're recalibration. Because every recovery drive teaches him not just how to adapt to Ferrari's car, but how to reshape Ferrari's culture around himself. Charles Leclerc's third place looked like a return to form, but underneath the podium veneer, Ferrari's other driver was quietly unsettled. "I just didn't gel with the car this weekend," he admitted. In Leclerc's world, that single sentence speaks volumes, because when Charles loses rhythm, Ferrari loses direction. Throughout practice, Leclerc's onboard traces showed constant micro-corrections through medium-speed corners, especially turns 8 and 9. The SF25's rear-end stability, praised by Hamilton earlier in the season, had become a double-edged sword. It gave predictability, but robbed Charles of the rotation he uses to attack apexes early. His throttle trace lagged Hamilton's by an average of 0.18 seconds per corner, a small delay that, across 56 laps, cost him nearly 8 seconds of potential time. Ferrari's engineers had been walking a tightrope between two philosophies. One is Hamilton's request for front axle authority, prioritising corner entry stability. The other is Leclerc's need for trail brake rotation and a livelier rear end. Those philosophies can coexist in theory, but not under parc fermé. Once the setup is locked after qualifying, both drivers live with the compromise. Austin's high-temperature balance shift only widened the gap. Leclerc's qualifying run should have secured pole. His telemetry showed he lost 0.09 seconds in the final sector, due to a small overcorrection mid-corner. But the deeper issue was his inability to trust the rear under heavy load. "Difficult to get into a rhythm," he said, and that rhythm is the heartbeat of his driving style. Without it, he reverts to caution. Vasseur's decision to start him on softs masked those limitations early, but by lap 18, Charles was already at the edge of the tyre's temperature envelope. The team managed the degradation well, averaging just 0.07 seconds per lap drop-off, but it forced him to underdrive in the middle stint. That's why his podium, though respectable, felt hollow inside the Ferrari garage. It wasn't the pace that frustrated him, it was the feeling. Leclerc drives on instinct, Hamilton on precision. Ferrari, right now, sits awkwardly between both worlds, and the team knows it can't serve two masters forever. If Ferrari's weakness in Austin was adaptability, McLaren's was dependency. A dependency on qualifying that's now threatening their championship lead. Lando Norris said it plainly. "It's a race to turn one." That wasn't an excuse, it was a diagnosis. In 2025's era of low degradation and near identical top 6 pace, overtaking margins have collapsed. Without track position, McLaren's racecraft turns theoretical pace into statistical futility. The team arrived in Austin with an upgraded front wing aimed at stabilising yaw sensitivity in the SEZs, a weakness first exposed in Suzuka. In simulation, the new design offered a 2/10 advantage across Sector 1. In reality, dirty air from Red Bull and Ferrari erased nearly all of it. Once Norris and Piastri fell behind at the start, the drag-limited DRS zones offered no recovery. Norris finished 6th, 23 seconds off the win, a number that perfectly captured the paradox of McLaren's season. Their car is arguably the most aerodynamically efficient package on the grid, yet it relies entirely on clean air to realise that efficiency. That's why their engineers keep calling 2025 the fragility year. The MCL 39 doesn't degrade tyres, it degrades opportunity. Every poor launch, every compromised line into turn 1 turns potential victories into podium scraps. Oscar Piastri's reaction summed it up best. If I'd come out of turn 1 in P3, I'd have been on the podium. There's truth in that, but also danger. When a team starts to believe qualifying is destiny, strategy becomes an afterthought. Ferrari's split tyre plan exposed that. Vasseur manufactured an advantage McLaren never saw coming. Behind the calm public face, Andrea Stella knows the numbers are shifting. McLaren's average qualifying gap to Red Bull is now just 0.08 seconds, but their race pace delta has widened to nearly 0.35 seconds per lap. That imbalance can't win titles. And if Verstappen keeps converting Saturdays into Sundays, McLaren's qualifying trap might soon turn into a championship collapse. Because every time they start behind Red Bull or Ferrari, their race is over before it begins. Lewis Hamilton didn't lose Austin because of speed. He lost it because Red Bull remembered who they were. After months of strategic hesitation and inconsistent balance, the RB21 looked alive again. Verstappen's average race pace was 0.3 faster than any Ferrari lap, but the more revealing number came from telemetry comparison. Hamilton's ERS deployment rate dropped by 2.3% in the final stint, while Verstappen's remained linear to the finish. That consistency is what Ferrari still can't replicate. Hamilton's radio silence in the closing laps wasn't defeat, it was assessment. He's driven dominant machinery before, but what separates him now is the way he processes weakness. Ferrari's engineers call it Lewis Mode 2, the phase where he withdraws from emotion and studies. After the race, while headlines focused on Verstappen's sweep, Hamilton was already replaying pit lane entry delta, corner minimum speeds and tyre onset times in his head. He knows Ferrari are close, just not integrated. "We haven't been upgrading the car," he said, "but we're still in the fight." That line wasn't self-congratulation, it was subtle criticism. Red Bull can improve over a weekend, because their car is one continuous feedback loop. Simulator data, sprint data, live adjustments. Ferrari's workflow still has friction. It's why Hamilton's progress has been measurable, but not exponential. Inside Maranello, some now whisper that Hamilton's feedback has accelerated Ferrari's chassis development by nearly 6 weeks on the calendar. The suspension response window, previously plus or minus 0.15 G during corner load, is now down to 0.09 G, almost matching Red Bull's precision. Yet the missing piece remains adaptability under pressure. Hamilton's frustration at Austin wasn't about a podium lost, it was about a chance to test Red Bull in clean air. Something he hasn't truly had since Bahrain. And every race that passes without that benchmark chips away at the rhythm he needs to lead Ferrari's technical evolution. But if Verstappen's win reminded Formula One that Red Bull's system still works, Hamilton's drive reminded Ferrari that theirs could if they let him finish building it. It's not open warfare, not yet. But the tension between Hamilton and Leclerc inside Ferrari is starting to shape the team's identity. On paper, they're equals. Two world-class drivers, both capable of pole laps, both adaptable, both patient. But under the surface, their philosophies couldn't be more different. Leclerc drives by instinct. He trusts the car's potential even when it bites him. Hamilton drives by understanding. He dissects every variable before committing. When Ferrari built the SF25, they tried to merge both instincts into one chassis. The result is a car that flatters neither completely. Hamilton's calm demands for stability clash with Leclerc's craving for oversteer. And at Austin, that conflict played out in lap time deltas. Hamilton faster through low-speed sections by 0.2, Leclerc quicker in the high-speed flow by almost the same margin. The problem isn't pace, it's identity. Ferrari must decide which driver defines its developmental philosophy. When Leclerc talks about rhythm, he's talking about emotion. When Hamilton talks about direction, he's talking about systems. And in Formula One, systems win championships. That's why Hamilton's feedback already carries new weight inside Maranello. Senior engineers have begun aligning simulator models to his telemetry first, then cross-checking against Leclerc's. It's not favoritism, it's structure. Leclerc feels it. You can hear it in his tone when he says he didn't gel with the car. It's quiet frustration, not jealousy, but awareness that Ferrari's internal compass may be turning slightly toward the 7-time champion. And Hamilton, for his part, isn't exploiting it. He knows he can't force the team's culture overnight. Instead, he's doing what he always does, letting results make the argument for him. The silent duel continues in briefings, in simulator feedback sessions, in small setup adjustments that ripple through the garage. Leclerc fights with flair, Hamilton fights with data. But both know the truth that Ferrari cannot yet say aloud. Only one philosophy will define the next championship push. And in the rhythm of this rivalry, Ferrari will find its real identity, or lose it, trying to please them both. When Lewis Hamilton signed for Ferrari, most thought it was a final chapter, a legacy move, a romantic detour before retirement. But inside the paddock, those who know him best now say the opposite. This isn't the end of Hamilton's story, it's the rewrite, and Austin proved it again. His performances this season aren't built on raw aggression or vintage heroics. They're built on refinement. In telemetry terms, Hamilton is braking later, but with smoother pedal pressure, averaging 6.8 bar less peak input than Leclerc over identical corners. That subtlety means less rear lock, cleaner rotation, and better tyre surface temperature management, invisible details that define long-run consistency. It's why even when Ferrari's strategy falters, he still drags the car upward. But Ferrari's equation remains incomplete. Their operational tempo, the rhythm of setup iteration, data translation, and driver communication, still runs slower than Red Bull's by about a session and a half. Red Bull can validate a new front suspension map by FP2. Ferrari often need until Sunday warm-up. Hamilton has been quietly working to close that gap, pushing for what he calls live engineering, the ability to adapt setup logic mid-weekend instead of post-race. For Maranello, it's a cultural shift, as significant as any mechanical upgrade. In Austin, it showed. His setup notes from Friday's FP1 directly informed Leclerc's Saturday rebound, narrowing their delta by 0.06 seconds in qualifying. That kind of cross-driver synergy is rare at Ferrari. And it's happening because Hamilton is teaching them how to treat race weekends as dynamic systems, not fixed plans. He's evolving from driver to architect. Every debrief is part analysis, part mentorship. Mechanics say his post-session reviews feel like engineering classes. This isn't about chasing nostalgia, it's about legacy through influence. Ferrari's technical group now measures development phases, not by races, but by Hamilton's feedback loops. He's redefining how the team thinks, and in doing so, rediscovering his own edge. Because Hamilton's greatest transformation at Ferrari isn't mechanical, it's philosophical. He's proving that control, patience, and clarity can be weapons as sharp as raw speed. 5 races remain. That's all Lewis Hamilton has left to turn Ferrari's momentum into proof, to show that the team isn't just improving, but evolving fast enough to matter. Verstappen's 40-point surge in Austin didn't just shift the championship math, it reframed Ferrari's mission. The goal is no longer winning every Sunday. It's closing the system gap before 2026 arrives. Hamilton sees it clearly. In private briefings, he's reportedly pressed Vasseur to reduce simulation dependency and prioritize live correlation. "We can't learn faster than we act," he told one insider after Singapore, a sentiment that's becoming Ferrari's unofficial mantra. The team now measures weekend success not by trophies, but by how closely their predicted data aligns with reality. In Austin, that delta dropped to under 2.5%. Ferrari's best correlation figure since Melbourne. It's not glamorous, but in Formula One, correlation equals control. The final stretch, Mexico, Vegas, Qatar, and the closing doubleheader, will test Ferrari's endurance more than its outright pace. Each track exposes a different weakness. Mexico's thin air will punish turbo efficiency, Vegas rewards mechanical grip, and Qatar will destroy any setup that can't manage rear temperatures. For Hamilton, those challenges are opportunities. His goal isn't just podiums. It's turning Ferrari into a machine that adapts under pressure. Meanwhile, Verstappen's dominance has reignited an old Hamilton instinct, the obsession with precision. Engineers say he now spends longer in debriefs than any driver on the grid, often staying until midnight to overlay comparative telemetry with his 2021 Mercedes data. It's not nostalgia, it's calibration. He's searching for the perfect equation between instinct and engineering, between who he was and who he's trying to become inside the red suit. If Ferrari's next evolution succeeds, historians won't remember 2025 as Hamilton's twilight. They'll remember it as the year he redefined how a great driver transforms a great team. Because for all the numbers, strategies and simulations, Formula One still comes down to one thing: the human who refuses to stop learning. When the dust settled over Austin, the numbers looked simple: Verstappen first, Leclerc third, Hamilton fourth. But those results hide the deeper truth of where Formula One stands. Red Bull may have regained control, yet Ferrari has rediscovered something even more important: coherence. For the first time all season, their race weekend unfolded like a system, rather than a reaction. Hamilton's fingerprints were everywhere. His lap data refined Leclerc's qualifying. His feedback guided the race balance. His restraint on radio kept strategy calm when chaos loomed. That's what Ferrari have been missing since the Vettel era: a leader who can build structure under pressure. The engineers in Maranello now talk about Hamilton weekends, sessions where the feedback cycle runs cleanly, where decisions feel premeditated, not improvised. But Lewis knows coherence isn't enough. It wins headlines, not championships. Ferrari still need to cut the feedback loop time from simulation to setup by another 12 hours if they want to match Red Bull's reactivity. They need to decide which philosophy defines their car: the instinct of Leclerc or the method of Hamilton. And they need to do it before winter testing closes the door on 2026's regulations. Hamilton, meanwhile, continues to play the long game. His drive at Austin wasn't about podiums, it was about influence. Quietly, he's shifted Ferrari's culture from romantic chaos to structured clarity. The team that once survived on passion now runs on process. For the first time in a decade, that looks sustainable. So as the grid resets for Mexico, the question isn't whether Ferrari can catch Red Bull. It's whether Ferrari can become Red Bull before it's too late. Can Hamilton turn a legacy brand into a modern racing system? Can precision outlast instinct? Can patience rewrite history? Because if the answer to those questions is yes, then the greatest comeback of Lewis Hamilton's career won't be measured in trophies, but in transformation. And if you thought Austin showed Ferrari's ceiling, think again. The real story is just beginning.